What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you a meta-analysis for the April 2019 format. Now, Konami has announced that we are not getting a new ban list until about the middle or the end of April, so at the time of recording this, we're pretty much going to be stuck with the same format for the next few weeks. But if you have any big tournaments coming up, maybe a regional or something along those lines, you're definitely going to want to keep yourself updated to know what the best decks are and what the decks are trending towards in terms of specific card choices in the current metagame. And speaking of events coming up, if you're going to be in the Fort Worth region on April 20th or 21st, I am going to be doing live commentary for the Pro Play Games Tour live stream. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be there to sign cards for you guys and maybe take pictures as well. So if you're interested, check out the description. I'm going to have all the info there, so see if you want to attend for yourself. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So here is the top 16 breakdown for YCS Guatemala, which concluded last weekend. Now, YCS Guatemala wasn't exactly the largest YCS by any stretch of the imagination. I believe it was just shy of about 300 players, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is still a premier event. I mean, you have some of the best players from Central and South America coming to compete at YCS Guatemala, and even had some of the big hitters from North America as well that went down to compete. So some really big names here. It's still a 2-day event, and you still have to play through, anywhere from like 13 to 15 rounds if you're going to want to take first place. So it's definitely still a very large event, at least in terms of how much work you have to go through to take first place. But Sky Striker ended up winning the event once again, and as you can see, Sky Striker actually had the highest representation in terms of the top 16 breakdown here. Now, taking up 7 of the top 16 slots, this isn't really anything new. We know the fact that Sky Striker is the strongest deck of the format. Sky Striker has probably been one of the strongest decks for pretty much the better part of the year, and that just goes to show how powerful the deck truly is. I want to go ahead and show you guys the first place deck profile from Paulo, and do keep in mind, this man not only won YCS Guatemala, but he also won the UDS in Medellin right before YCS Guatemala, and then he also won the Team YCS in Atlanta the weekend before that. So this is the list that he used for the YCS in Atlanta as well as the UDS in Medellin. Now, do keep in mind there were probably a slight number of changes. I wasn't able to find the deck list from YCS Guatemala specifically, although E-Man Games did clarify that there were barely any changes. It was kind of just cards shifting around between the main and the side deck, and the deck looks pretty much the same. And when you look at this, yeah, it's Sky Striker, but there are some things here I do want to mention in terms of specific card choices. One thing is that multi-roll is at 3, and multi-roll being at 3 I feel like is very significant solely because of the fact that it's just a way to kind of just ensure all your plays are going to go through. It's a card that Salamangreat specifically has to stop with Salamangreat Roar, or they're never going to get the opportunity to be able to stop anything else because of the fact that it'll prevent the opponent from being able to respond to any of the spell effects if that multi-roll resolves. That card is just incredibly powerful and crucial to the strategy because if you draw it in tandem with something like your Engage, you don't have to search it, which means you can search other cards like Widow Anchor, Hornet Drones, whatever card you may need for the situation. You don't have to draw it in tandem with the multi-roll. The level of recursion that multi-roll offers is just utterly ridiculous, and that's why it's seen at 3 now, compared to in the past when maybe it was only at like 2 copies. Going to 3 has proven to be essential now that Salamangreat has moved so far up into the metagame. Another card here is Mystical Space Typhoon. Now, Mystical Space Typhoon isn't really anything new for Sky Striker, but Paulo went into detail in the deck profile, which I will link in the description because he does a much better job of explaining his deck than I will. But with Mystical Space Typhoon, he's playing it over Jamming Wave, and even though it's not a searchable form of spell and trap removal because it doesn't have the Sky Striker tag, it's a lot more versatile in the ways it can be used because it's a quick play spell, so you can use it on your opponent's turn. It also doesn't require you to pop one of your own cards to be able to, it's just kind of awkward sometimes, and you can use it to pop your own area 0, where it's a lot more versatile than a card like Jamming Waves would be. Even though Jamming Waves can offer that extra value, Mystical Space Typhoon seemed to be a card that he really likes and might be a new trend moving forward, since this is basically a 3-time winning Sky Striker deck. That's just utterly insane. Couple of other things to mention though. One is the upping of Eagle Booster to 2 copies. Paulo goes in detail saying how ensuring that Kagari resolves is one of the most most crucial points of the deck. And the thing is, when it comes to Ego Booster, before when Effect Veiler wasn't really in the metagame, Kagari was most likely going to resolve more often than not, but now with like every deck playing Effect Veiler, especially Salamangreat in particular, and even Sky Striker as well, you need to make sure that that Kagari resolves. And a lot of people resort to going to the battle phase and like crashing their Ray so that they could go ahead and like resummon and then just go ahead and make Kagari in the battle phase to dodge Effect Veiler, but then you're wasting your battle phase. So by upping Ego Booster, you're ensuring you can do Kagari in the main phase, and then you can use your battle phase for whatever other tactics you want to employ, and that's kind of like an easy way to kind of bait out Veiler in that regard without wasting your battle phase. So that's pretty neat. Another card is Hita, and this is a card that actually isn't shown in this list. He actually replaced it with Unicorn for UDS Majin, and the thing is with Hita, it's really neat because you can like steal your opponent's monster. Most people are playing Ash Blossom against Sky Strike, you can steal Kagari. It only requires one fire monster to be used, so Kagari is already native to the deck. You can steal your opponent's fire monster and then go into something like a Link 3, like maybe something like a Unicorn, or you can even do something like go into a Ningirsu if you steal one of their Link monsters to have a non-targeting, non-disruptive form of removal. So just a lot of thought and engineering into this deck, and again, I'll have the link down in the description if you want to see Paulo's explanations more in depth. That is going to take us, though, to another top 16 deck list from YCS Guatemala, and that is Danger Thunder Dragon. This is Jesse Cotton's list, but Asala, who managed to get 4th, making top 4 in the event, also played a list. I believe it was one card different, if my memory serves correctly, but his list wasn't anywhere available, so I just went ahead and showed Jesse's for the purposes of this video. And this is basically like the Danger Thunder list you're going to come to expect now, the more we pretty much have Danger Thunder Dragon in the format, and this is pretty much what it's come to. We have the fact that we have the Dark Matter combo, sending stuff like Archbrave Dragon as well as the Amorphage Goliath, so that during your opponent's turn it's going to get special summoned, so that it's going to lock your opponent out of using the extra deck, in addition to using a plentiful abundance of negations like stuff like Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend Abyss. They're going to be under Colossus. Like, there's just so many crazy things that this deck is capable of doing. So if you're going against Danger Thunder, this is the template you should expect to be going up against for the foreseeable future. One interesting card I want to mention, though, is Electric Virus. Now, Electric Virus is actually pretty sick, because if you're going up against this matchup, you can go ahead and use Electric Virus to steal your opponent's Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. It can't negate the Hot Red Archfiend Abyss because it's not a card on the field that's face up. You discard it to the graveyard, and now you get to lock your opponent out of using one of their effects, because the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss can negate one monster on their field as well. So it's almost like a 2-for-1, and then granting you the protection under the Abyss. That's just a really cool interaction. So if you don't already have your copies of Electric Virus, you might want to pick them up, because going up against this matchup, obviously there's better cards here, like using stuff maybe like Artifact Lancia or some other particular floodgates that kind of just stop them from getting to boards like this in the first place. But going second, if your deck can incorporate a card like Electric Virus, it might be the card for you, especially if your metagame is just pretty much plagued by Danger Thunder Dragon players. So we've talked about Sky Striker, we've talked about Danger Thunder Dragon and other Thunder Dragon variants, but we still have to talk about Salamangreat, because even though Salamangreat only took up 25% of the top 16 from YCS Guatemala, tied with Danger Thunder Dragon, you still need to know what this deck has going on, because this deck is going to continue to be everywhere. I personally believe this deck is going to take little to no hits on the next upcoming ban list, and we're going to be seeing Salamangreat for a long time. So kicking things off, here is a list of a first place Salamangreat deck from a regional in North Dakota. Now this deck is actually taking advantage of multiple copies of Salamangreat Foul, which is a trend we're starting to see a little bit more of, basically because Foul is a level 4. It makes your rank 4 plays a lot easier without having to do more specific plays reliant on other cards in the deck. And again, if you can make your Abyss Dweller or your Baguska more easily, then why not, right? This deck is also taking advantage of Crusadia Reclusia, just as another level 3 fire monster that you could use to go into something like your Mirage Stallion, just have as extra link fodder, or to be used as a piece of removal for some very annoying threats if you already have all the rest of your combo pieces that you need. I think this is a really nice tech in the deck, and again, it depends on the player preference whether or not it's correct, but we are starting to see more and more of it, so definitely keep that in mind if you're going up against your Salamangreat players. Here's another deck list that took first place at an Italian regional, and this one is taking advantage of Artifact Sanctum and Scythe in the main deck. Again, this is something that is kind of like 50-50 at the moment, so if you're going up against Salamangreat, you might not have to worry about it, but at the same time, you definitely can't rule it out, because you need to to save that Ash Blossom for the Sanctum, because if they have the Sanctum and you have no way to stop it, then you're just going to be automatically just out of the game, unless you're playing a deck that doesn't necessarily rely on the extra deck, and that's kind of just the dynamic that a card like Scythe creates. So definitely hold that Ash for the Sanctum, unless you have multiple ways to stop the Sanctum, because otherwise it's going to be a very bad time for you. Another deck list is from the massive 600 player German regional that took place recently. I think this is one of the biggest regionals they've ever had in not only just Germany, but I think in Europe, and this deck took second place. Again, very similar to the other decks we've seen, just kind of employing a lot of the same tactics, but it's cool that not all of these Salamangreat decks are the same, like the ratios are tending to vary. So this is just 3 different deck lists that you can sample from to kind of get some different ideas, that if you're playing Salamangreat or you expect to play against a lot of Salamangreat, you kind of know the directions that some players are going with it and some of the success that these players are seeing with Salamangreat. Now, last but not least, I do want to talk about Orcas, because Orcas did manage to sneak in 1 top slot in the top 16 at YCS Guatemala, and honestly, I do believe that Orcas is one of the strongest decks moving into this next format, specifically because of the support in Dark Neostorm that the deck will be receiving is going to take the deck to another level. So here's a second place deck list of a Danger Orcas build from a regional here in the US. I believe it was in Kansas, and this is kind of like what we've been seeing more of the same. I mean, it pretty much incorporates the dangers and then a bunch of cards to help further extend the plays of the Orcas strategy, just kind of helping you get 2 monsters on the field to get to your mermaid. I mean, we see stuff like Neospace Connector to summon out Aqua Dolphin, so you can rip hand traps out of your opponent's hand before proceeding into your Orcas combo. That's really nothing new. We see the Striker Engine in here because the Striker Engine essentially is a 1-card Nightmare Phoenix, which then gets you to your Nightmare Mermaid, and you pretty much can do full combo from there. And this is, again, what we've expected to see here in the TCG. The OCG versions are a lot different because they don't have the danger cards, but I think the danger cards actually make the deck a lot more viable, specifically because you can play under stuff like Thunder Dragon Colossus and still get to your Orcas combo without having to worry about search cards, you know, like Engage or, you know, like the Trickstar engine that some people are starting to mess around with, and different things like that. There is another deck list, though, that is a zombie Orcas danger list that took first place at a regional over in the UK, and this deck is just so cool. We've seen this deck piloted before by Asala and other top players, I believe at the UDS in Las Vegas, and maybe some events prior to that, but this deck is so cool because by incorporating a card like Zombie World, you can shut down Salamangreat from being able to go into their generic link plays because it makes all the monsters zombie type instead of Cybers, which means they can't go into Balinks, and it allows you to do some really cool things with cards like Mizuki. Mizuki basically turning all of your, Zombie World turning all of the cards into zombie types, meaning Mizuki can resurrect like any of them, and it allows the deck to extend in ways that the deck pretty much doesn't normally have access to. So you can kind of throw cards away, let them get baited out by your opponent, and then Mizuki can like resurrect them, and you can continue to do your full Orcas boards regardless. It's a nice little take on the deck, incorporating a lot of different other strategies, and it's something that we don't see too much of, but it's just a really cool variant on the Orcas strategy that you might want to mess around with if you are a combo fiend. So guys, that's gonna do it for the meta analysis. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about these decks, and let me know what you think about this format I did for the meta analysis this time around. Normally I talk about the decks a little bit more in depth and why they're doing so well, but because of the fact that we're at a point where the decks have been defined now for a while, I figured it'd be a lot more beneficial to you guys to show you a lot of different deck lists. You guys can get some ideas of what you might even want to play or what you might need to know to play against coming into the upcoming April 2019 format. Let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.